It was Arbor Day, 1988. My wife Tina and I and my two sons, Dan and Ben, were awaiting the arrival of a Amish family that was very well respected in their community. And the purpose of their visit was to kind of gauge our suitability for joining the community, which we had started as a process some months before. We had all the farm implements, all the horse-drawn implements. We had 6 Belgian draft workhorses, and we lived across the field from her family's dairy farm. So while they were farming in a very mechanized way, we were farming very slowly. Well, we wanted to join the community. We had to join the Amish church. And this particular day, we had planned a very nice meal, and we were really looking forward to having them over and really having just a really very nice, wholesome family get-together that afternoon. But there were a lot of other things to be done, and I had another agenda that day, and my other agenda was to plant the final area of trees up near the road, about 200 feet away from the house, because I had already planted some beautiful ornamental crabapple trees that were in full bloom along the 200 feet of driveway, and I had also planted some London planes, the kind of sycamore that grows about 100 feet high that you see in the old streets of London, where they have these towering, majestic trees. And so they were kind of new. They were only about 20 feet high. So I took the boys, we got their wagon, and they were dressed up in their Carhartt coveralls, and they had their Amish straw hats on, and they had their boots on because we had to walk across a kind of a wet, it was late April, we had to walk through a kind of a wet 7-acre pasture that we had behind the house. And we made it through the pasture, and we went back to a area that had about 7,000 Christmas trees that had never been cut down. And some of them were 10, 15 feet high, and I knew we'd find a lot of seedlings there because I wanted to make this little grove of pines up near the road. We wanted to make about 20 to 25 of them. So we dug up the seedlings. The boys dug up the seedlings with their little shovels, and we packed them tightly into this radio flyer wagon that we had. I had to pull the wagon back because it was kind of slow to pull it through some of the muddy areas. We went up, and the boys dug their holes very carefully, and we deposited the trees. They were about this big in each hole, about 4-foot space in between. It was great, and that really kind of completed the tree plan for the front yard. Well, we had other things to do to get ready for the family to arrive, and I had some things that had to be done up at the farm with the other horses and that, the buggy horses for the buggies that we had, and then we also had to get the lawn mowed, all 3 acres of it, and I had this big 36-inch deck John Deere lawnmower. So we had Ben did that, and Ben was a perfectionist, or Dan, the older son, 10 years old. He was a perfectionist at everything, and if something went wrong, he always had kind of a meltdown because he didn't want to be embarrassed. That was the worst thing that could happen to Daniel. Daniel Richard was his name. So I got him on the mower, and he's mowing, doing a great job. First year that he had been mowing. And Ben and I went up to the farm, and we tended to some horses up there while Tina, my wife, was making a dinner. It was almost like a Thanksgiving dinner because she wanted to have turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, and the whole thing. Why at the end of April? But we thought that maybe the family would enjoy that. Well, the family arrives. The lawn is cut, nice. We all sit down, and we had a very pleasant dinner. They couldn't have been nicer, and that was our experience. And we wanted to live in that community, that environment, really, really badly. So after dinner, Jacob, the man, said, you know, I'd really like to see the horses. So we went out to the barn. He saw the horses, and he was very impressed with the horses because they were registered Belgian draft horses. about the 1,700 to 2,000 pound range. And he liked them because most Amish did not buy registered draft horses, which were fairly costly. They bought the grade draft horse, and it might not even be a purebred draft horse. But they were usually smaller, but they were more than enough to pull plows and do the kind of horse-drawn work that they were suited for. So then June and my wife came out of the house, and I wanted to show them the yard and our plan. So we went out, and they really enjoyed seeing the crabapple trees as they drove in. And they came in a van, and typically the Amish, if you know them, do not drive cars. They don't have motorized vehicles. So they were driven by a Mennonite from that community also. And he was there as well. So we were all headed out looking at the trees. We were looking at the trees up the driveway, and I was explaining how we'd gone to Ohio to get them. And then I took them over and I showed them the London plane, and they weren't familiar with London plane trees at all. And then I said, well, come on, we've got to go up and you've got to see what my two boys did this morning. So we all walked up to the edge of the road, and as we got up there, I'm looking and there's no trees. And then I realized what was left was about the size of my finger, 20 little tree trunks, just mower height. My first impression or thought was, geez, I think I'll just take them to another place. Maybe we'll go look at the rock garden that we planted last year. But I stood there and I just was in disbelief. And all of a sudden, I started just to turn angry. And I stood there for a few moments, and I got so angry, I just blurted out, "God damn it, Daniel Richard!" And at that, June Hostetler, the wife, looked at me. You said that? And her husband, Jacob, was kind of turning away, but I could tell he had this big grin on his face. And when I looked at my wife, Tina, she was just rolling her eyes. And that's when it dawned on me, I probably wasn't Amish material. Well, they left. It's very nice. A few days later, we were sitting, Tina and I, at the dinner table. We were there alone, and I looked at the table and I looked at her and I said, you know, I don't think I can do without television. And that's how we became almost Amish. Thank you.